Death Note, a popular Japanese manga series about a 17-year-old boy, Light Yagami, who gains the power to kill people when he finds a supernatural notebook called the Death Note. He decides to use this power for good and starts only killing criminals, but his ambition to rid the world of evil turns sour when he's seduced into thinking of himself as a god. The manga was written by Tsugumi Ohba and drawn by artist Takeshi Obata. The manga ran from December 2003 to March 2006 and consists of 12 volumes. The series is sold with sales of over 26 million copies in America alone. The series has also been adapted into a full-length anime series, a spin-off novel, various video games, tons of merchandise, and 3 feature-length live-action film adaptations, making it one of the most popular and famous mangas of all time. However, despite its success and popularity, the Dark series has had some very negative effects on society that have caused the book to be challenged and banned all over the world.
There is a lot of questionable content in Death Note. Featured in the series are death gods, suicide, betrayal, bondage, capture, and homicide. Also, there are scenes that parallel stories in the Bible. However, the main theme in the series is death. Light Yagami has the ability to kill anyone by a distance and anonymously in the world by simply writing a person's name in the Death Note. Because of his abilities, he swears to only kill criminals, which in effect gets him a lot of support from civilians who notice the dropping crime rates. The general public name him Kira, from the English word killer, and start praising him as if he were a godlike entity. Opposing Light is Detective L, the world's greatest detective, and promising to catch him on the basis that no one man should have the ability to pass judgment, even on criminals. This alone introduces questionable morals to the viewers. Is it better to support one man's divine judgment, or the fair but imperfect justice system? Outside of the book's world, there have been many Kira supporters found on the internet and quite a few reenactors. Most of these reenactors are just students who are fans of the book, but in writing the names and causes of death of people in their own communities is a great cause for concern for people who don't understand the nature of the book, and have feared and shocked people into banning the series completely.
A Richmond Public School student is suspended over a list of classmates he wrote in a book titled Death Note. Our Richmond reporter Sean Mazzarello has more on that list, including what the school system is doing about it.
Sabrina, the student is a senior at Franklin Military Academy in the city's East End. The principal there sent a letter home to parents after a teacher spotted the student reading a list of his classmates' names in the book called Death Note.
The student who got in trouble was not in class today. He's suspended pending the ongoing investigation. Senior April Hopkins says she's friends with the student.
He doesn't really say much. He just stays to himself.
Hopkins' name wasn't on the list, but some of her friends were. She says they don't fear him, nor does she.
I asked him what was wrong with him when he was sitting in the office, because he looked sad, and then that's when he told me that the teacher took it to the principal.
In the letter sent home to parents, the principal directs them to the book's website to get a better understanding of how the student came up with the idea. The book is about a high school student who rids the world of evil with the help of a supernatural notebook. Anyone whose name is listed in the book dies. There's also a place on the website for people to type in on how they'd like to see others die.
The Franklin Military Academy student was not the only student to be suspended in America for possessing a death note and writing students' names in it. From Hartsville Middle School in South Carolina, a student was found with the book listing 7 names of school students. 2 boys were arrested in Alabama for possessing death notes with the names of fellow classmates and staff members, and were suspended and were made by school officials to meet with a probation officer. In Washington, 1 middle school boy was expelled and 3 suspended for having their own death notes. And in Illinois, a middle school student was suspended for having a smaller version of the death note that had names written in it. The student claimed it was a joke, however, he still had to follow through with the punishment. An excerpt from a school's letter to the South Carolina student's parents read like this: "Regardless of the origin of the book, we take the situation very seriously. The safety of our school family is always our top priority. We treat situations like this the same as if a student called in a bomb threat or brought a weapon to school. While there may not be any serious intent to do anyone harm, we cannot and will not take the chance with our students. We will take all steps necessary to ensure our students' well-being." The book was unanimously banned in a public school in Albuquerque after a mother of a student at Albuquerque's Volcano Vista High School, Peggy Salazar, advocated for the ban, saying that killing is just not something we should put out there for our kids to read in this way. Tom Jean, one of the 7 committee members at the manga's hearing, stated, "High school-aged kids do grapple with questions about justice and morality, and whether civilization, or the societies of which they are a part of, are making good decisions." However, the influence of the series didn't just end at the reenacting of writing names in the Death Note. Parents of a Russian girl who committed suicide linked her death to the book and blamed the series for killing their daughter.
Пока разного рода общественники собирают свои марши, российских детей гробит японское аниме. Безобидные тетрадки, которые штампуют в Китае и массово поставляют в Россию, расходятся по школьным рюкзакам, как черные метки, которые родители обнаруживают слишком поздно, когда ребенок уже мертв. Светлана Чебан выясняла, как же остановить смерть.
Родители и одноклассники, да едва ли не весь Екатеринбург до сих пор не может поверить, что 13-летняя Юля Макарова могла покончить с собой из-за какой-то тетрадки. Отличница, спортсменка и красавица спрыгнула вот с этого балкона на 13-м этаже, увидев свое имя вот в этой тетради смерти. Ее нашли у девочки на столе, так же, как и предсмертную записку, которая подтверждает эту версию.
В тот момент, когда кто-то рождается, кто-то умирает. И с этим ничего не поделаешь. Смерть не есть противоположность жизни, а лишь ее логическое заключение. Теперь и мой черед.
Юля первая, но не последняя жертва тетради убийцы, уверен отец девочки. Он обращался напрямую ко всем местным чиновникам. Он писал депутатам о том, что произошло, но они молчат. А тем временем на телефон его умершей дочери пришло СМС от московской подруги. Она пообещала убить себя, потому что тоже нашла свое имя в тетради смерти.
Может, это игра какая-то, и надо попытаться хотя бы спасти других. Я знаю, что нашу дочь не спасти уже, но других-то мы можем спасти.
An entire group of parents from the central Russian region of Ural sent a letter to President Vladimir Putin to ban the popular Death Note manga series, complaining in an open letter to him that it is harmful to children. In the letter, the parents of the girl demanded that sales of the books and related DVDs be banned, saying that Death Note is caused to encourage interest, death in our children and affects them emotionally and affects their development negatively. Perhaps the most alarming incident related to the Death Note series was a murder that happened in Belgium in 2007, when the torso of an unidentified Caucasian man and 2 thighs were found in Dundon Park near Brussels. The scene of the crime was discovered by 2 walkers roughly around 6 hours after the body was left. At the scene of the crime were 2 notes, both reading "Watashi wa Kira desu," a misspelling of the phrase "Watashi wa Kira desu," or "I am Kira," the catchphrase of Light in the anime. These 2 notes were the only thing left of the body, and the murderer was titled Manga Mood, which is Dutch for the manga murderer. In 2010, 3 years after the manga murder was found, 3 men were arrested as suspects and 1 for failing to provide assistance for the person in danger. The police said that the victim may have lived with the suspects, and added that the 4 men were fans of the manga. In their arrest, the 4 men did say that they did not know the alleged victim's name. However, he did live with them. The police's theory was that the 4 men asked the victim to leave their home, and the argument that ensued resulted in the victim's death.
Although the book never became banned in Belgium, it is important to recognise that many books have related to murders and crimes. Some of these books are The Collector by John Fowles, The Most Dangerous Game by Richard Cannell, The Fashionable Adventures of Joshua Craig by David Graham Phillips, and perhaps one of the most famous, Capture in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. Not all of these books have been banned, but it is the truth that books can be dangerous. With knowing that books have the power to encourage people to commit terrible crimes, is it still wrong to ban them? We have seen 3 examples of just how much influence Death Note has had on people's lives. Should it really be a book that is allowed to stay in our schools and libraries?
When did you read Death Note?
Like 8th grade, a long time ago, like 3 years ago, yeah.
So I think I was probably 14 or 15, maybe 13. I think I read it in freshman or sophomore year.
Yeah, it's like elementary school, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade-ish.
Back when I started boarding school, we didn't really have access to computers in a junior boarding school, but we did have access to manga and the books and Shonen Jump. So I guess that's probably when I started reading a lot more, especially manga.
Maybe like 10, 11.
Really?
Yeah, I read it really young.
I think when I was in middle school, for me.
Yeah.
I was 12.
12?
Yeah.
And when you were reading it, was there any material that you thought should have made a ban? Did it cross your mind?
I mean, I thought of how people might take it seriously and have their own little people's names on it.
No, because I think that there are a lot of things that, like a lot of books and mangas that deal with violence.
Do you feel as though you were a bit young to read that book?
Not really. I mean, I don't think middle school is necessarily too young for it, just because there isn't very much in it. Like, unless you really read into the willful death aspect of it, there's not really much that's inappropriate for, like, middle schoolers.
I don't know, I guess we were too young to fully understand everything, because it was a very imaginative film. Like, it had, like, so many interesting, like, creative factors to it. So.
Well, thinking back, maybe, because it gets, like, really intense at some bits, but in the beginning, I wasn't really paying attention to it. Then when I reread it again, when I was like 13, I was like, oh damn, some of this stuff is pretty.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, like, I agree. When I first read it, I didn't really think much into it, but then thinking back, it's like Death Note and, like, what's it called? The Shinigami. What is that in English?
Death God?
Yeah, the Death God and, like killing people.
Yeah, it's definitely not appropriate for children, but then,
But you read it when you were like 11.
I'm bad.
Were suspended for writing names in Death Notes. What do you feel about that?
I think that there is an intended audience for all forms of media. I think that some things should definitely not be shown to some audiences, whether it be of age or mental age or growth.
Well, I mean, the students should know not to take something so seriously. It's a show. But, I mean, I guess part of it is that the demographic for that particular series is kind of young. Like, most of the people I know that have seen Death Note were like 12 or 13 when they read it, and that's a really impressionable.
I have come across many like Death Notes, like notebooks being sold, in like bookstores and stuff, like in China. And I personally have never bought it, but when I first knew that it was banned after I grew up, it was like, why would they do that? But after you said how they would like imitate and do the behavior, I sort of understand, because it does make sense that if they just like unconsciously, like subconsciously imitate the behavior, it's like trying to kill someone behavior. That wouldn't be like a good thing for kids to like do.
So yeah, I mean, I do think that they should be suspended for writing people's names in Death Note, because like wishing death on someone is terrible and not okay, and it's definitely a form of bullying.
So then there was also the girl who committed suicide, and her suicide was linked to the manga, and that caused the book to be banned and challenged in Russia. How do you feel about the book linking to suicide? Do you think that's the book's fault, or do you think it's just...
I think it could be seen as both the book's fault and the girl's fault, depending on which viewpoint you see. I think that just because there have been a couple of incidents, maybe more than most other manga animation granted, with Death Note in particular, I still don't think that is okay grounds for it to be completely banned.
Again, I would say that's more a case of, like, if anything, more bullying and more an issue of the people who wrote her name in the book, and an issue of, like, peer conflict than, like, the book itself being inherently, like, causing death. So,
I mean, it's tough because the book obviously did influence what happened, but it was an unstable mind, I guess, that put this into, that made this happen.
And then next there was a murder that happened in Belgium, and all of these things where a man's torso was found, and all of his clothes were burned and everything, but the only thing left with his body was 2 notes saying "Watashi wa Kira desu," which is, I am Kira.
Oh my god. No, this is too extreme. Like,
You guys can watch my
these
documentary.
people. It's so extreme. That's way too extreme.
No, they
That's
said
just
that
psychos. Yeah. They can't distinguish between like reality and fiction.
Because it does, like, provide a model, like, if someone were to read it and, like, see Light as a role model, as, like, committing justice where the sort of legal system falls through, then I can see that inspiring people to murder. But I don't think that it should be banned, because the people that are going to get that out of it are, like, the people that would already be inclined towards murder anyway. I think it's just, like, if just because it's something that they can relate to and that they can use to justify their actions, I don't think that, like clearly a lot of people have read Death Note and haven't killed people.
What do you feel about these books that have led and inspired deaths? Do you think they're relevant to that? Do you think they should be banned because of that?
Well, we can take this to a whole nother extreme. We can take this in a varying number of ways.
Just because a book makes people think a certain way doesn't mean that it should be banned. There have been so many revolutionary books, and we can't just ban them. So.
Secondly, there's a whole issue of freedom of press. I know that's a big thing in our country, but back home in Singapore, it's not really a thing. It's not really a thing in many countries, actually, freedom of speech or freedom of press. It's a privilege. If people can't be expected to use that privilege correctly, I suppose lawmakers will have to believe that they may have to restrict such privileges.
Well, I think it's kind of tragic if you ban, like, any kind of literature in a way, because then you're just not making it accessible to people. I mean, like, people who take stuff from books or anything and then they apply it to, like, real life but in a negative way, that's like an individual thing. I don't think it's, like, gonna affect the whole majority. It's probably, like, some kind of psycho problem. I don't think books should be banned.
Yeah, I agree.
Because, I mean, it has the whole it might badly influence people kind of factor, but it also has so many, like, great creative, like, super mind-blowing factors to it. And the storyline is honestly very touching, and I cried because of it.
While it seemed like the appropriate thing for affected communities to ban the book, the truth is that banning any sort of book can be harmful to the greater good of the community. For all the people who have read this widely popular manga, the series has been a source of genuine and harmless entertainment. In an interview with Tsugumi Ohba, the writer of Death Note, he was asked, "What is your stance on justice? Do people have the right to take another life in the name of justice?" In which he responded, "I did not put much deep thought into the subjects like life and death or justice and evil. I wrote the story hoping that it would be good entertainment." And then he was asked, "Where did the inspiration for Death Note come from?" He responded, "There was nothing in particular. I started thinking of some ideas, While these ideas were still floating in the back of my mind, I got more ideas to fill up detailed plots, like the rules and the gods of death, and so on. Eventually, I thought there was enough material for a good story to tell. That's all the series is, a good story. Despite it being provocative enough to cause harm, it's most likely at the fault of the people in those communities, and banning Death Note from children because of its violence is banning them from reading a story that teaches overall good morals, that justice should always prevail over evil, and that it is never up to one person to decide who should live or die. If books can inspire crime, then books can also inspire change for the better. But we need a balance of information available in the world to make those distinctions for ourselves. Do I recommend the book? Absolutely. The material touches on the universal struggles of morals, faith, and justice, and has appealed to audiences outside of the manga and anime community.
Awesome. Any last remarks about the book?
It's amazing and I loved it.
Death Note is it's good! It's really good. Everyone should read it. There's no reason for it to be banned. Mary L.
I love Death Note.
Yeah,
I love it too.
Favorite. I'm obsessed with it.
Oh, it's 5:30.
Whoa.
What happened to the dinner you promised me?
There's gonna be a documentary.